It was showtime for the New Orleans Saints quarterbacks today, but they weren't the only stars shining at training camp day 11. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints. And on today's episode, we're going to take a look at how the Saints finally got a little bit of good news on the injury front, but of course it was compounded with a couple of new absences today. We're also going to dive into Cedric Wilson's big day, a much needed big day for one of the New Orleans Saints wide receivers not named Chris Olave nor Rashid Shaheed. And we're going to kick everything off today looking at great performances by the top two quarterbacks today. Today's top two quarterbacks, but maybe not overall the top two quarterbacks. We appreciate you very much, as always, for being here and making us your first listen of the day every day, and for being an everydayer here on the Locked On Saints podcast, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, where they're making every moment more, giving away all customers new free bonuses and boosts every day, all summer long. You can find that over at FanDuel.com. That's where you're going to want to go to get your summer started. So it was a big day for both of the New Orleans Saints quarterbacks. Remember, Jake Haener was not here today. The second-year quarterback was getting a procedure done that was a part of the treatment for his skin cancer diagnosis that he received earlier on this summer. So he was not there. In his stead, Carr and Spencer Rattler took all of the snaps. No quarterback snaps for Taysom Hill. Want to be very clear about that. So this was all Derek Carr and Spencer Rattler's days. Both quarterbacks did impress, but Spencer Rattler in particular was impressive. And I think some of that comes from the fact that he's the, rookie quarterback and all that. So he's inherently going to be more impressive than Derek Carr, who turned around and ran the offense really well today. Absolutely no qualms with anything about what Derek Carr did. We'll dive into his day here in a little bit, but I want to start off with Spencer Rattler because he impressed in some situational drills, which we haven't seen yet. Remember, Spencer was the one player in yesterday's practice when they were working on the end of half situation that did not get the ball into the end zone on a drive, completing just 5 of his 9 passes and running out of time before he was able to get anything going. Today, he got the opportunity to do a end of game drive that he ended up driving the team down, converted a 4th and 5 in the process, and got the Saints in good field goal position. Unfortunately, Blake Grupe missed that field goal. So here was the scenario. 1 minute, 15 seconds left on the clock. Saints starting with the ball on their own 30, so 70 yards to drive. They were down 28-30 in this simulation, which meant a field goal wins the game. And I thought Rattler did a good job getting them where they needed to be. He completed over the course of this drive 3 of his 4 passes and had good decision-making, good anticipation, good timing on the majority of his throws. The first completion was to Dallin Holker with Rico Payton in coverage. Rico Payton had a bit of a struggle of a day today. A lot of the passes that went his way were caught by the receivers that he was covering. Then we saw 2 straight completions to Michael Jacobson, the top tight end, or the big body tight end there, who was the top tight end for this particular group of players. Spencer Rattler's just really comfortable with him. He said that he and Michael Jacobson, he kind of missed on a couple of connections with him last week, so really went to work with him over the course of this week, and that has certainly worked out. The two of them have had a nice week. He ended up having an incomplete pass go over to Dallin Holker. That one was broken up by Kool-Aid McKinstry. He was immediately told by a coach, you never throw that ball late. So that's one thing that they're still working on a bit, is the timing, although it is fair to say that the timing in other areas, and certainly on other snaps, has worked out fine so far for Spencer Rattler. Then a couple of runs by the pair of James Robinson as well as Jacob Caboti got them into field goal range. And unfortunately, the 46-yard field goal was missed by Blake Grupe. A field goal, by the way, or a kicker, by the way, that Dennis Allen used the word competition to describe when it came down to Blake Grupe and Charlie Smith. Kind of the first time that we've heard a kicker competition acknowledged by the head coach, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. I thought that Spencer Rattler had a nice day, even beyond that field goal drive, what should have been a field goal drive there. He ended up having some nice connections later on to where he was just kind of calm. He was composed. He had one point where he was flushed out of the pocket on a play action rollout, found Cedric Wilson wide open down the right sideline on a big completion there. Really, really nice stuff from Spencer Rattler today, who calm, composed, really good decision-making, getting better on the timing of things, stuff like that. I think the biggest thing is still that he feels pressure a little bit too early, but I think he'll get used to that, especially once he sees some in-game, real-life NFL action as early as this weekend up against the Arizona Cardinals. I'll tell you now, my expectation is still that Jake Haener will get the start, quote-unquote, up against the Arizona Cardinals, and he'll play the first half, and then I would expect Spencer Rattler to take over for the second half, and then for that to reverse going into the following week. But we'll see exactly how it is that the Saints go about that. They are still very much looking at what this wide receiver room looks like. We discussed on this show many moons ago that the Saints have kind of changed their philosophy around building up their backup quarterback. They're not going to a veteran quarterback. They're going to these young quarterbacks and waiting to see if one of them can be the backup. And Dennis Allen was asked about that today. And one of the things that he said was something along the lines of, we're trying to figure out if we have a backup quarterback on our roster is effectively the verbiage that he used. And so I don't think that rules out the idea that they could turn to a veteran if they decide that neither of these guys are their backup. But I think you'll be hard pressed for one of these guys not to win that role between Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener. And hey, look, not to be outdone or forgotten, Derek Carr, very nice on his end of game drive as well. 4 of 6, connecting with a few different receivers. The field goal was good from 46. No, I was right, 48. Sorry, my apologies. He was good for 46 on that one. Completed a couple of passes on dump offs to Jamal Williams, who had maybe his best practice that we've seen in a while. Had a connection with Taysom Hill over the middle, and then had a really, really nice connection with Chris Olave with Tyrann Mathieu over the top. Absolutely just wide open on that play. It was just kind of this crosser. He started off in the slot, crossed around to the middle. Nobody even saw him. Ended up being able to get it over the top to him. Little run to get the ball where they wanted it for Blake Grupe, a spike, and then a Blake Grupe field goal to effectively, quote unquote, win the game at the end of that drill. So nice situational stuff, nice situational work for the Saints today, and pretty successful in getting all of it done. I think the thing that was most impressive was Spencer Rattler managing that 4th and 5 to keep the drive alive and then continue to push down. Really, really good stuff there. So liked what we saw from both of these quarterbacks, but it wasn't just the quarterbacks. We saw some really nice plays from the wide receivers, and we still saw some nice plays over on the defensive side as well. Let's break down one of the most important days for a New Orleans Saints wide receiver in some time. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode and in this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp Therapy Online is awesome. I use it. I have used it since the pandemic. It has been big for me, especially with understanding things like non-negotiables. What are the things that I don't want to give up in my time because they are my self-care and stuff like that? So therapy has kind of become a part of that. And the thing that I love about BetterHelp is that even on the road, I can do a phone call instead of doing a video chat. I don't have to go to a physical office or anything like that. It makes it nice, super convenient, easy for me to use, all of that. So I'm a big proponent of therapy. And so if you've been thinking about it and thinking about maybe making it one of your non-negotiables, highly recommend it. And I highly recommend BetterHelp as well. So never skip a therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon for 10% off of your first month. BetterHelp.com/lockedon. All right, family. Probably one of the most important days for a New Orleans Saints wide receiver not named Chris Olave or Rashid Shaheed happened today with Cedric Wilson, the New Orleans Saints' newest addition, or one of the New Orleans Saints' newest additions at the position, having a good day, along with a couple of other wide receivers today, too. So I wanted to start by highlighting him, as well as a few other players that stood out, even some over on the defensive side as well. Talked about the good day for the quarterbacks. It didn't stop the defense from still making some splashes and still making some plays today. We appreciate you very much for making us your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out that new Locked On NFL 24/7 stream. All the biggest stories from around the National Football League, programmed specifically for you. Make sure you get those biggest stories from the local experts that cover the teams and know them best. Head over to the Locked On NFL YouTube page or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app today to get started. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as always, please, if you got questions, feel free to drop your questions in so I can get those answered in tomorrow's episode. Tomorrow is a day off for the New Orleans Saints on Tuesday, but we will still have an episode for you to enjoy as we sort of take a look at where the Saints are and what we're hoping to see those couple of practices before the Saints take on the Arizona Cardinals later on in the weekend. So I want to take a look at Cedric Wilson Jr.'s day today. The New Orleans Saints need another one of those wide receivers to really step up, stand out, all of that. And today was a good day for Cedric Wilson, who put together another strong practice. I liked what I saw from him yesterday. I liked what I saw from him a few weeks ago or about a week ago before he dealt with his injury. Dealt with that injury, has been back, and has kind of strung together a couple of nice, consistent practices. He has been most consistently the player to line up with Chris Olave along with Mason Tipton, while the team right now doesn't have doesn't have Rashid Shaheed to put in the lineup. So I'm liking what we're seeing from Cedric Wilson so far. He's a bigger bodied guy, but you can utilize him outside and inside. He can line up all over the place. The Saints had a really nice connection between Derek Carr and Chris Olave, where Chris Olave ran a route from the slot. On the outside of that route was Cedric Wilson over at the X spot. So it's good, the amount of different things that you can do with him. And we've seen Cedric Wilson excel before. You look back at I think it was 2021 season with the Dallas Cowboys, where he was spectacular for them. It was his best season, and he did a lot of that work, if not most of that work, from the slot. So good to see all of that here in Saints training camp so far. So I think there were a couple of things that were the highlights there. There was the play to where he worked his way open, sort of in that levels concept. This is something that we've seen a lot of from the Saints so far. Play action, roll out, get the quarterback moving in the same direction that the quarterback is moving. There's 3 routes, one short, one intermediate, one deep, that are kind of working to the same area of the field, working to the same side of the field that the quarterback is scrambling / bootlegging out. And in the midst of that, Spencer Rattler then gets to kind of look short, look deep, look intermediate. And as he got intermediate, he said 2 or 3 reads into his progression. He saw Cedric Wilson was wide open, delivered it for him. Really well run route by Cedric. Good concentration on the football, catch, turn up field, and immediately started to work to get some extra yards as well, which is always a welcome sight to see. So very happy to see that when it came to him. We also saw him win both of his one-on-one reps today. The Saints went back to doing some one-on-ones between the wide receivers, corners, and then some safeties involved in there as well. And Cedric Wilson ran 2, won both. The first of which was a slant up against Alontae Taylor. Really, really nice route there. And then the second one was a nice back shoulder throw with Kool-Aid McKinstry in coverage, who has been impressive. Remember, those are the top 2 corners today, because no Marshawn Lattimore, no Paulson Adebo again. So with that being the case, those are the guys that were the top 2 corners. Both performed well, but Cedric Wilson ended up getting the best of both today. So a really strong day by Cedric Wilson. I also want to take a look over on the defensive side here. Willie Gay. Willie Gay might be, along with Chase Young, the most exciting addition that the New Orleans Saints made this offseason. And that goes for the rookie class, free agency, all of it. I just think he is such an electrifying player at the second level. Playmaker guy, really good speed, really good head on his shoulders as well, can see how things are developing in front of him and is able to attack that. He has made plays in coverage, being able to close in on running backs and tight ends, working towards the outside, knocking the ball out from behind. We've seen him also crash down and run plays. You hear him getting a lot of love and a lot of props, a lot of attaboys from linebackers coach Michael Hodges, who's always yelling like, good job, Willie, like all this other stuff. So we see it over and over again. The thing that was really interesting was that Dennis Allen was talking about him today and said that he's seen a lot of splash plays from him, and that there are things that he needs to get corrected that could end up causing him some trouble. So the Saints clearly don't feel that he's fully there yet, but they're very, very pleased with what they're seeing from him so far. I spoke with one player who said that he is somebody that he cannot stop watching from off on the side when he's watching things develop out there. And so Willie Gay, number 6, man, he has been a big addition for this team. I think will be a big addition for this team in 2024. And I think it's going to be really interesting too, is as the NFL now trends to being heavier, 2 running back sets, 2 tight end sets, things like that. It's going to allow Willie Gay to be on the field a lot more for the New Orleans Saints, who should be playing a lot more 3 linebacker sets this year than they have in recent past. We've watched that number tick up as defenses have gotten heavier. Offenses have gotten heavier and heavier and heavier again. But I think even with Willie Gay, he's somebody you could leave on the field on a third down because of his speed, his coverage ability, all those other things. So one of the things that Willie Gay said that he loves most about being in New Orleans and what the New Orleans defensive system is that they don't take all their linebackers off the field on third downs like they used to in Kansas City, to where only one linebacker would be on the field on those third downs. He said they usually keep at least two linebackers out there. And one of the quotes that he said was, I like that they actually trust their linebackers here. And so that's been a big needle mover for him. And he's been a big needle mover for the New Orleans Saints as well. Last thing I want to discuss Colin Saunders. Colin Saunders, who gets my Dog of the Day award today, wasn't the best player on the field. I thought that there were guys like Chris Olave and Derek Carr and Spencer Rattler who would probably earn the quote-unquote best player of the day award. But for me, Colin Saunders was the Dog of the Day. On that play that I described earlier where Spencer Rattler was flushed out to the right side and then delivered that really nice pass to Cedric Wilson on the outside. The offense believed that that was a clear completion. I thought it was a clean release as well, and catch and potential touchdown. The defense thought it was a sack by Colin Saunders, and Colin Saunders needed everybody to know that that was his sack. And so he was celebrating it, all that kind of stuff. Not only did he need everybody to know it, he deserved for everybody to know it if that was the case. So that play in particular maybe went up for a little bit of contention. From my eyes, I don't think that he would have closed in on Spencer Rattler quick enough. I thought Spencer got the ball out and it was a clear completion for me to Cedric Wilson. But then the very next play, because there was all of this sort of confusion and all this arguing about whose play it was and all these other things, on the very next play, Colin Saunders ended up blowing up a run play before it even got the opportunity to look like a run play. It was just outstanding. He just bulldozed his way in and then made a big stop that got everybody jumping, everybody hype over on the defensive side. It really, really hyped up the defense for the majority of that drive. And I thought that was a really, really big moment. That one was a run up the middle by Jacob Cabote. And he just made this enormous stop in the backfield, yelling, screaming, celebrating, went off to the sideline, threw his helmet down. He was so pumped that he made that play right after, feeling like he got the sack, but then the offense saying that he didn't, all that stuff. So I think he was just playing a little angry, and it worked out great for him. And I thought that was probably the most high point of energy all throughout today's camp practice. It wasn't low energy by any means. There was definitely a sense of urgency, everybody rushing to get around and everything like that, everybody moving with a sense of meaning, all that other stuff. It was just that moment really brought everybody up. I mean, it kind of shook the place in a way that was really cool. So that's why Colin Saunders gets Dog of the Day today. He also just had a really nice day as well. I think that defensive interior, Colin Saunders, Brian Brzee, Nathan Shepard, and then now you add in Christian Boyd. But I think in particular, those guys that are going from a first year with the team to a second year with the team, they are taking a big time step forward here throughout training camp. And I'm really looking forward to seeing them in action, because this New Orleans Saints defensive interior might be one of the most improved areas for their defense, or really for their team here in 2024. And that could go a long way for this team in terms of improving in the run game, getting pressure on quarterbacks right up the middle. All those things end up moving the needle for you. All right, coming up next, I want to give you some good injury news followed by some not so good injury news. We got that coming up for you as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is making every moment more all summer long by giving all customers a free boost or bonus every single day. There's something for everyone every day all summer long over at FanDuel.com. So you want to get into the MLB with all of the baseball action continuing along. You can get into parlays in terms of hits, home runs hit, bases stolen, so much more. You can even get into things like the over-under, end of year awards. You can get ahead on the NFL. There's a ton for you to check out over at FanDuel every single day. And remember, every single one of those days, you're also going to get a free boost or bonus all summer long as well. So head over to FanDuel.com today so that you can start making the most out of your summer. It's FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Let's Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints finally got some good news when it came to injuries. Some not necessarily long-awaited, but some returns finally happening for the team. But it was unfortunately immediately followed up by two more players not present today. So let's start off with the good news here. The good news, Peyton Turner and Nathan Shepard, both of which on the defensive line that were dealing with toe injuries, were back at practice today. Nathan Shepard was, I think it's fair to say, more involved. He participated all the way through team drills and things like that. Peyton Turner participated up until team drills and then kind of took it easy, but stayed out there the entire time. Didn't look like he was moving around with a limp or anything like that. So I would imagine that after the day off and then going into Wednesday, he'll be back out there. Peyton Turner has got to, he wants to stay healthy. He's got to stay healthy. Him being able to get back out there on the football field and being able to make some of those plays that he has shown that he can make when he's healthy is massive. And that's going to be big for the New Orleans Saints, who are looking for the sort of, not necessarily just their top tier talent, Chase Young, Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan, to produce when it comes to edge rushers. They'd love to see guys like Peyton Turner and Isaiah Foskey, who is rapidly improving, it feels like, every week. They'd love to see those guys be able to contribute as well. The more that they contribute, the better the room as a whole gets, the higher the floor of that unit gets, all that ends up helping you big time. So it was good to see Peyton Turner back out there. It was great to see Nathan Shepard back out there as well, who's a guy that's a little bit unsung, but has had a really strong camp so far. Hated seeing him deal with an injury and then not be able to practice yesterday, but it was great to see him back out there today, being disruptive, being his typical self, all that. I think him and Bryan Bresee as the pass rushers of the Saints defensive interior are really talented and should be able to contribute there, while Colin Saunders as well as Christian Boyd can come in and help out a little bit more when it comes to what they're looking to do in the run game and stopping things from going up the A gaps and all those other pieces. I think that's when they get into all of those abilities to be able to move guys around, all that. Then things become really interesting sort of in the passing downs, because we've also seen a lot of Cam Jordan working on the interior here throughout camp. And so when you get the opportunity to have, a guy like Chase Young on one side, Carl Granderson on the other side, and then your interior is Cam Jordan and let's say Bryan Bresee or Nathan Shepard, it just gives you a lot of firepower on those passing downs, right? Third and long, things like that. So very, very interesting to see how the Saints have utilized and kind of mixed and matched their defensive line quite a bit. I'm intrigued and very excited to see how they keep that going into the 2024 regular season. Now, it wasn't all just good news for the New Orleans Saints. They got Peyton Turner back, they got Nathan Shepard back, but unfortunately, Ugo Amadi, who's dealing with a groin injury, as well as Chandler Brewer, the offensive lineman, who's dealing with a triceps injury, were both out. Now, we'll see. This could be a 2-for-1 situation, miss one practice and get the day off on Tuesday, get back out on the field on Wednesday, but it just feels like the Saints just can't gain ground. Dennis Allen alluding to the fact that there are more injuries so far than he would like for this team, but also believes that a little bit of it is building callus for the regular season. You kind of got to get a little bit used to things. You got to get used to getting hit. You got to get used to dealing with these things during training camp. And so it doesn't seem like there's anybody that's missing right now. Demario Davis, who they've already admitted to playing it cautious with, Cam Jordan, Rashid Shaheed, who they've already admitted to playing it cautious with, I would say Paulson Adebo, somebody who they've also admitted to playing it cautious with. It doesn't seem like they're concerned that these guys are going to miss regular season time with these injuries, and instead kind of look at this as an opportunity to just get acclimated, right? Like deal with the injuries now, get them out of the way, whatever that might be, and then head into the regular season healthy. So they're not trying to push these guys any further than they've already gone, and that's a pretty good sign. I thought that we saw some nice things from Trevor Penning as well as Taliesin Fuanga today. Saw a nice couple of blocks from Landon Young. Saw some nice stuff from your usual suspects in terms of Cesar Ruiz and Eric McCoy as well, but really good stuff on the tackle side today. I don't want to say that the offensive line has improved because it's too early for that, I feel, but we're seeing some good things from the offensive line get strung together a little bit right now. And so that I would say would be a third successful day for the offensive line, which look still Colin Saunders got into the backfield. Isaiah Foskey disrupted a bit. Carl Granderson, disrupting a bit and everything like that as well. So it's not all clean. It's not 100%, but it doesn't have to be either. This felt like a really balanced day to where you saw success on the offense. You saw some success on the defense. The defense even had an interception. Shamar Jean-Charles getting an interception today. Derek Carr was the passer on that one. This is an interception, though, that I don't really put a lot of stock into. Derek Carr was targeting Mason Tipton over the middle of the field. Mason Tipton, not the biggest target, also a very fast target, and probably one of the most unfamiliar targets for Derek Carr. Ball just was a little bit too high for him, wasn't able to make a play on it. Shamar Jean-Charles was playing well over the top, ended up being able to make the interception. Not a big deal. If this was a situation to where Derek Carr didn't see a defender and he got undercut, or he ended up putting one right to the defender, or just a bad choice with the ball or anything like that, fine, then I would absolutely hold that against. But this one I just kind of take with a little bit of a grain of salt. It's an unfamiliar receiver, smaller body, all this other stuff. Didn't get an opportunity to make a play on the ball. You move on. So still a good moment, though, for Shamar Jean-Charles, who now has 2 interceptions in as many days. So he's on a little bit of a streak here as he goes into the day off. So really, really good. I want to update real quick on the kicker battle. This was actually really interesting. Dennis Allen was asked about how he feels about his kickers, and he said, I think we've got a nice competition going there, or something to that effect. And this was really the first time that we heard the Saints kind of acknowledge Charlie Smith and Blake Grupe as being in a competition. It's always been a little bit more like, it's Blake Grupe's gig. Charlie Smith is impressive, but he's coming in as an international player, so the Saints don't really have to make any decisions on him. He's roster exemption, so it's like having a 17th practice squad guy that doesn't count against any of your numbers in 2024. So you get him for 3 years. You don't have to rush for anything, yada, yada. This is really the first time that we kind of heard Dennis Allen talk about this being a competition. And right now, I'd still have to give it to Blake Grupe, who drained a 61-yarder easy today. Really, really nice. Ended up missing one from, I believe it was 42 yards at an earlier point, and then ended up missing that 46-yard one that would have been the Spencer Rattler game-winning drive. So he ended up going 8 of 10 today. He's 41 of 48 so far through the season. So not terrible at all. Not bad. I think you'd probably like to see some fewer misses. This is now the second time in camp that he has missed from, or the third time in camp now is where he's missed within 50. You'd like to see him hit those and everything, sure. But it was great to see him drain one from 61 with room to spare too. So, and I think we've seen Charlie Smith hit one over 60. I think he hit a 62-yarder the other day. We've seen Charlie Smith miss several, or at least a pair, maybe 3 extra points. So you can give or take either one, but the battle is still ongoing in terms of where things are there. But it was interesting just to hear this one referred to as a battle kind of for the first time. So I think the preseason games, much like the quarterbacks, are going to say a lot about where those kickers are as well. So Saints really entertaining any level of competition that they can get out of all this. So really, really nice stuff from around the Saints offense. A couple little things. You won't notice any notes from today about Alvin Kamara, and everything's fine. He was just on a veteran rest day. And then Taysom Hill was back from his rest day, which he had yesterday as well. So, all right. I think we are all wrapped up on notes today. Make sure you come back tomorrow morning. We'll dive into a few other things, taking a look more ahead. What do we expect to see over the last 2 days of practices before the Saints travel to Arizona for their Saturday preseason games? We'll dive into all that. If you've got any questions, please make sure to drop your questions in. I saw somebody ask about Alvin Kamara and any chance that a contract gets done this week. Sure, there's always a chance, but I wouldn't hold my breath. It doesn't feel like that's something that they're worried about moving along right away. I think they're worried about getting everything started with training camp and all this other stuff, but we'll see where things go. There is an offer on the table, according to a couple of folks, when it comes to Alvin Kamara, but we'll see where things move from there. We'll update that a little bit more in tomorrow's episode. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you go and check out Locked On Fantasy Football. I know your fantasy football drafts are coming up. You don't want to end up like my friend Allie, who lost her fantasy football league and had to go out there and sell lemonade like a 6-year-old. And you don't want to go through that. So instead, check out Locked On Fantasy Football so that you can win your fantasy football league. Michelle Majuk as well as Vinny I are giving you everything you need to know, some of the brightest minds in fantasy football. Go and check them out on Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Appreciate you very much, as always, for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me in the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.